mutiny, murder, mayhem, marauding, untold violence, cannibalism, and goodness knows what. How could you not want to read this book? Hello everyone, welcome to and welcome back to my channel Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark, and I'm so glad that you've joined me. I hope you're doing very well indeed. And I'm going to talk a bit today about The Wager by David Grann, which was a fantastic read. I polished it off in, well, I suppose technically less than a day, if I take the hours that I spent reading it. It's not a very long book. It's a non-fiction story that follows the misadventures of His Majesty's ship, The Wager, which took part in an ill-fated mission during the wonderfully termed War of Jenkins' Ear, which later evolved into the... I can never remember if it's the War of the Austrian Succession, Spanish Succession, 7 Years' War, something like that. It eventually became part of a wider conflict, but to have a war termed the War of Jenkins' Ear is pretty cool anyway. He explains in the book how it got that name. I mean, I've long known about it, but and I've always thought it great, and it's nice to get a story that takes place during said conflict. So it is, of course, a true story, and His Majesty's ship, The Wager, as part of a small flotilla of about 5 other ships, I think, that set off to capture a Spanish treasure galleon as it plies the seas between the Spanish-controlled areas of South America and the Philippines in order to exchange silver for all the wonderful materials and spices and stuff from the East that it would then take back to Spain to sell. Unfortunately, these people, they're not used to going around the Cape Horn in South America and through things like the Straits of Magellan, and the weather is appalling and terrible, and things don't go according to plan. They get split up, and the Wager finds itself shipwrecked off a desolate island, which actually then becomes called Wager Island. So yeah, obviously it wasn't called that before the Wager went there. They had terrible problems before they even underwent the shipwreck. The whole mission was ill-fated really from the start. It was absolutely shocking, the number of people who died either from disease or other problems. Even people deserting before the ships were able to set sail, and those people that had survived, at least up to the wreck, found themselves basically in hell, really, or the closest you can probably get to it on Earth, on this tiny island that just is forested with a big volcano in the middle of it, and nothing much in the way of natural resources or food or anything to sustain them. Now, as David Grann explains in the book, it wasn't really as bad as all that if you knew how to go about surviving, and of course they didn't. And when they get the opportunity to learn, they pilfer it by acting ridiculously, terribly unfriendly and racist towards the natives that tried to help them, and basically also trying to rape their women folk and stuff like that, which is pretty grim. So they end up being, left there without the knowledge and ability to find their own food and forage for the things they need, which serves them right, really. But it's absolutely fascinating story. As I said at the beginning, contains all those elements, which is pretty grim. It contains some wonderful characters as well. Impressively, there's a young 16-year-old, 16 when the mission begins, 16-year-old midshipman called John Byron, who is the grandfather of the much fated Lord Byron, the romantic poet. So that's pretty cool. And the story basically, as I said, follows this ship from beginning its mission through to it getting wrecked, and then what happens afterwards. Now, they explain in the back that obviously some of these people did survive, which is how we know, of course, about what went down, but they survived in kind of 2 distinct groups. About 29 of the normal company of the ship, if you like, found its way to Brazil and then back to England, where they were able to give this kind of their own account of what went down on the island and during the shipwreck. And then I think, I don't know if it's 5 years after the mission began or 5 years after they returned, but a boat comes into England with 3 more survivors on it who have a very different tale to tell, and thus leads to some kind of criminal investigation of sorts. But you have to read it really to find out. The author is great, the writing is extremely engaging, and it pulls you in, and it's a rip-roaring quick read. My one criticism, and it's not really fair, is that perhaps he over-explains things a bit, but I do appreciate this is for the wider audience. If you are somebody who really enjoys reading either naval historical fiction or other naval non-fiction books of the time, then you probably don't need the level of explanation that he goes into, but it doesn't really hurt, I suppose, and he is writing it for a general audience who may not necessarily read those books. And if you have read any David Graham before, then you'll know that this isn't his normal area, of course, with naval history. So I suppose if he's trying to appeal to his general readership, then it makes sense as to why he goes into detail in explaining those particular things. Now, I was really looking forward to reading this because I've read 2 of his other books. I read The Lost City Z, which was great, following the misadventures of Percy Fawcett and his disappearance in the Amazon jungle. And I read a couple of years ago as well, Killers of the Flower Moon. And I don't know if I'm looking forward to the film or not, or whether it will be disappointing, but I'll definitely watch it when it comes out. And I think both those 2 books have been made into films, and I would be surprised if this one wasn't, because it certainly lends itself to being filmed. But all in all, it's great fun. It's a nice bit of non-fiction that reads like a thrilling nautical adventure novel and murder mystery and travelogue all rolled into one. So do yourself a favour, get a hold of a copy and read it. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. So before I go, I'd just like to thank once again my wonderful patrons for all their wonderful and fantastic support. It is so much appreciated. I'm so thrilled that so many of you have decided to join it. It's really, much more than I expected. So I'm absolutely overjoyed with that. And should you wish to join, of course, you may do so. There's only 1 tier, and there's also a week's free trial, and the link will be down below. So until next time, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Do take care. Bye bye.